Hello everybody and welcome back to another one of those videos where I talk about updates on Dwarf Fortress coming from Toady1 and KitFox. Now while we have a patch to talk about today, we also have a big announcement, and I'm just going to get that out of the way at the beginning. Dwarf Fortress Adventure Mode is going to be going into beta on April 17th, which is also Tarn's birthday. Apparently it was his personal goal to get the game ready for that date to a point where it is in a shippable enough state to put it out in beta. This will be going out in the beta branches similar to recent patches. After a couple of weeks, supposedly it'll then move forwards into the main branch. So, as of April 17th, we will be able to re-experience or experience Adventure Mode either for a second time in a new coat of paint, or for a first time for many of you, I'm sure. Let's dive in. Hi, Jurists. KitFox writes, we are less than a month away from April, which means Adventure Mode launch is just around the corner. Time flies when you're developing fun, and we wanted to share our launch plans with you as they will be a little different from what we did with Fortress Mode. The beta for Adventure Mode will open on April 17th, which is Tarn's birthday. Anyone who owns Dwarf Fortress on Steam will be able to access the beta. Adventure Mode will fully launch a few weeks later on the main branch, and we will be announcing the official release date as soon as we can. We hope that this will give proper time to iron out the major bugs while giving you a chance to play right away. So I'll talk about this a little bit more, but first we're going to cover the patch itself, and I'm going to kind of throw in some commentary on the patch. So patch 50.12 is kind of the big interface patch. It's the patch that Putnam has been working on while Tarn has been working on rebuilding Adventure Mode. The goal of this patch was to make a lot of the UI more usable and add a lot of functionality that people have been asking for to certain menus, things like searchable screens for the dwarves and better sorting on other screens, as well as the ability to, actually add dwarves into the military by just simply typing in a name. So let's read KitFox's blurb. After a few extra weeks of beta testing, patch 50.12 is finally live. Thank you to everyone who tested the update and sent in bug reports. It was very helpful. This patch brings many improvements to sorting and searching in the menus, as well as a ton of bug fixes and additional keyboard support. And llamas are also now able to pull wagons because they are now pack animals. And let's dive into the patch notes, although they did actually forget something in the patch notes, which I confirmed is actually in this version, even though it's not in the patch notes. So let's dive in and we'll talk about the thing that's missing. New stuff, the ability to sort lists from creature and task menus, kitchen interface, and searching and sorting. I'm not super thrilled on the kitchen interface. I personally find that there is one major issue, which is it only shows stuff that's currently in your kitchen instead of stuff that's always been in the kitchen, which I seem to recall the older screen used to show stuff that had been in the kitchen, although maybe I'm just going crazy and misremembering. Regardless, I find it a little bit jarring to use the new kitchen menu as it doesn't use the tab functionality of the old menus. I know that Putnam said that her reasoning for changing this menu was because Dwarf Fortress is going to just inevitably get more and more tabs and more menus as more features are added, because that's just the way of things with Dwarf Fortress. The UI is just going to keep stacking. So certain menus need to be condensed. And while I get that, I find that the new layout is a little bit clunky. Maybe it's just the defaults that are a little bit clunky, just showing everything by default. I wish it was filtered by default, but it's not a bad menu. I just am not entirely sold on it at this point. You can now edit and restore work details, which is fantastic, a feature that everybody's been asking for, meaning you can now go into the work details screen, you can edit them, as well as add new work details on top of things. Also, when you are sorting through the work details you've already set up, it actually puts a little icon next to the one so that you know if it's already assigned to another job or not. Basically, if you want to get incredibly granular, it's now even easier to do that, as well as editing the defaults, which I think is fantastic. We're still waiting on more images for the work details themselves, aside from just the Roman numerals that we have right now, but I've heard through a number of people that that is a thing in the works. It's just not a huge priority. Saves can now be sorted in the world menu folder in the title screen. This is a small one, but it's very nice if you have a billion saves like I do. Keyboard support, before you get too excited about this, it's for unit lists, meaning page up and page down will move up and down on unit lists. Arrow keys and some of the other buttons actually work in the job functions screen, which is the one that was just edited with being able to edit and restore the default work details. So you can use arrow keys to now pan around that screen, and some buttons work. Apparently the kitchen menu has keyboard support, but I haven't actually figured out what the buttons are. They're not listed anywhere from what I can tell. I looked through the controls options on Steam a while ago and I wasn't able to find them. So if they're there, they're hidden very well and they're not marked anywhere. But keyboard support is coming, slowly. That's what this means. And lastly, the ability to designate burrows over multiple Z levels, which was a huge thing that I always complained about previously in previous versions. Nextly, Major bug fixes. Now, this is where there's one missing, which is added some additional statue graphics, which apparently were in the game already partially and just hadn't been added in, which I think that's funny. That's listed as a bug. And then fixed some classic building interface lights. Now, the one that's missing here is trolls are fixed. So goblin sites now operate as intended, meaning they burrow. They didn't burrow before. So off-site goblins that you couldn't see before that are in their own places that are off-map, far away from where your fortress is situated. Before, they would just stay on the surface and not dig. Well, this doesn't mean they can dig on your map, like they can't burrow down into your fortress or anything. They can go down to caverns in their own living sites, meaning they can go down into the caverns and tame cavern creatures, which means instead of just occasionally having beak dogs, they're much more likely to have things like trolls. They're more likely to have things like cave dragons. They're more likely to have things like basically large mounts and creatures that, let's just say, are a little bit more nasty than your average goblin, and making the fighting of goblins and fighting with goblins a much bigger challenge, as well as a lot more fun in fortress mode because of they bring more interesting things when they attack you. Next up, we're just into the other section, so let's just spin through this real quick. Squad assignment lists are now sorted in the units list. Fix an error in calculation of bridge support, making it easier to place bridges. Fix an issue in how environment-appropriate work animals are selected for visiting the fortress, and fixed missing auto-pause tooltips. Additional miscellaneous optimizations and various other things, and you can read the rest. And then Alexander and Bay 12 add at the bottom, there will be lots more adventure mode news coming in the coming weeks, including a part 2 of the combat video from last time. So I am aware that KitFox is going to GDC, so if we don't see anything before GDC, I wouldn't expect anything until after GDC. GDC is the 18th until the 22nd, so there probably won't be anything that week. So if we don't get a news update next week about Adventure Mode, or if we don't get that video next week, it definitely won't be out the week after, because a bunch of KitFox people have talks that they are doing at GDC. I know that Tarn is supposedly going to GDC for one day just to say hi, and then heading back to continue working on Adventure Mode. All right, so now it's the important bit. It's time for us to just kind of talk about Adventure Mode and what to expect. So from what I understand, this update is going to come in pretty hot. I know that Tarn has been kind of tempering expectations a little bit, talking about things like cabin building. Keep in mind, cabin building isn't a full city building thing. It is just simply you're able to populate a little site with a small hut and put some chairs and tables in it, and that's about it. You can't really do much else with it aside from that. It's just a site that now belongs to you. And there isn't much you can do with it outside of just building it. And I know Tarn was saying that that feature might miss the release date. And now when he says the release date, I assume he's referring to this beta release date. This was something that was said during the last interview that I had with him. However, I think that this is probably the best way for them to launch Adventure Mode, simply because Dwarf Fortress is a game that doesn't have a lot of QA, and I think that putting into a beta branch, giving people leveled expectations and allowing people the time to dip in if they want and play it if they want, or simply waiting until it's ironed out, is probably the best way to go about doing things. On my end, personally, I'm a little bit disappointed that it's going into a beta and not simply launching like Fortress Mode did. For one very selfish reason. I'm a YouTuber and Twitch streamer. I bank on excitement as ways to grow my channels. And because it's going into a beta, it's going to be a small bubble of excitement with the hardcore community, and then that's going to peter down a little bit towards the actual launch, which won't be as big because of everybody who's been playing in the beta up until that point. It kind of nerfs the potential influx that a big new update can have. While I do genuinely believe it's the better decision for the game itself, it kind of makes me a little bit sad that it's going into a beta. That being said, my plans for the actual beta itself is still as I've stated before. I'm going to have as many tutorials as ready for day one as humanly possible, and here's hoping the game is in a stable enough state that I can create a proper intro guide for most of the player base. The next thing that I would like to kind of cover, and kind of the final thing I would like to cover in this video, is for you out there excited to play Adventure Mode. If you are planning to play Adventure Mode and you want to start preparing a world to play it in, keep in mind that regardless of what changes just came in, that being the fixing of trolls or the general changes that have just happened to the game, keep in mind that there may be some hidden stuff or some exciting stuff that is added in alongside of this update. Now, that doesn't mean that your current worlds that you're playing in won't be playable in the Adventure Mode launch. However, what it might mean is that there is a possibility that you won't get the optimal experience if you don't generate new worlds. I will be generating a new world as soon as I have access to the beta, But if you would like to prepare, of course you can continue playing in the worlds that you are playing in right now, or generating a new one for this update. Just keep in mind, you may end up in a situation where you want to generate a new world and have to give up one that you're attached to. I don't have any confirmations on that, it's just a suspicion and something that's happened in the past. Now, before I go, the last thing I gotta say is, Tarn will be joining me on stream on the 14th of this month. That is the 14th of March at 2 p.m. Pacific time. That will be streamed both here on YouTube as well as on Twitch. Twitch will be the primary place that I will be focusing on, and I will be promoting it on Reddit. I will be talking about it beforehand. I will be putting out a place where you can submit questions in a day or so in a separate video on this YouTube channel. So if you would like to send in a question, start thinking about what you'd like to ask right about now, and I will get you a Google form by the end of the weekend so that you can send them in officially. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you very much to everybody who supports this channel. Thanks for watching these videos in this series, and I look forward to seeing more footage of Adventure Mode, and I look forward to you watching my tutorials in the coming weeks. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.